Okay, so welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
Today we're going to do something a little bit different.
A little dangerous.
Yeah, a little spicy.
That's right.
We are going to dive into Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
Yeah, this is a fun one.
And obviously this book it can be a little controversial.
Yes.
And we want to be very clear right up front that, this deep dive is about helping you understand these laws and giving you a framework for understanding how power dynamics work.
Yes.
Not about turning you into some kind of, Machiavellian evil genius.
Exactly.
So you can't argue that Greene's book has provided us with some really unique and valuable insights into how power dynamics work.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think it's important to kind of emphasize that this book isn't about becoming some sort of Machiavellian manipulator.
Right.
It's really about kind of shining a light on these invisible forces that are constantly at play in our lives, shaping our decisions, our relationships, everything.
With that awareness.
Exactly. It's about awareness and understanding.
Yeah, and once you have that awareness, then you can start to navigate those dynamics a little bit more effectively.
Yeah. And Greene lays out these 48 laws, and we could probably do a whole series on every single one, but there's one that just really jumped out at me.
Okay.
Especially, in today's world, and it's Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you.
Power can be used for good or for evil.
Right.
And these laws are really just about, the mechanics of power.
A way to see the world a little bit clearer.
Yeah. And so, like I said, we're not endorsing any kind of, manipulative or unethical behavior.
Right.
But we do think that it's important to understand how power works.
Especially if you feel like you're on the receiving end a lot.
Right.
Knowing these laws can help you protect yourself and maybe even gain a little bit of power of your own.
Yeah. Okay, so why don't we just jump right in?
Let's do it.
What do you think is the most interesting law, or the one that you find yourself thinking about the most?
I think for me, it's Law 1, never outshine the master.
Okay.
Because it's so counterintuitive, right?
Right.
Like you want to impress the people above you.
Yeah, you want to show them how good you are.
Exactly.
So how do you not outshine them?
Well, it's all about making your master feel secure.
Okay.
Never make them feel like you're trying to take their place.
Right.
So Grenier uses the story of Nicolas Fouquet, who was the finance minister for King Louis XIV.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
He throws this lavish party, showing off all of his wealth and intelligence.
He was trying to win the king over?
Yeah, he thought he was impressing the king.
Makes sense.
But what he didn't realize is that he was actually making the king feel threatened.
Oh.
Louis XIV saw him as a rival.
Oh, wow.
And had Fouquet imprisoned for life.
That's a bad outcome.
Yeah, so the takeaway here is to always be mindful of how you're making your superiors feel.
Okay, so it's you want to show your value, but you don't want to threaten them.
Right.
So how do you find that balance?
Well, I think it's about framing your contributions in a way that makes your superiors feel good.
Okay.
So instead of saying, I have this great idea, you could say, building on your vision, I was thinking.
Okay.
Or I was inspired by your approach and I came up with this.
It's like you're giving them credit.
Exactly. You're making them feel like they're still in control.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to another law.
Okay.
That I find really interesting. And also a little bit scary.
Ooh, which one?
Learn to keep people dependent on.
Yeah, yes. This is a classic.
Okay, so how do you do that without being super manipulative? Especially in a world where we're constantly being told, to be independent, to be self-sufficient.
Right. Be your own person.
Yeah, it feels almost like a paradox.
It does seem counterintuitive at first glance.
Yeah.
But that's what makes this law so insightful.
Okay.
Greene is essentially suggesting that true power can actually come from cultivating a sense of dependence, where others rely on you for your unique skills, your knowledge, or resources that you bring to the table.
So instead of this kind of individualistic, every man for himself approach, it's more about becoming so valuable to others that they see their success as being intertwined with yours.
Exactly. It's like a strategic interdependence.
I like that.
Yeah, think about it. In the past, you always had powerful rulers who surrounded themselves with advisors and allies. Right. Who depended on their patronage and support. And it's not so different today. Imagine a really skilled tech expert who's become indispensable to a company.
Right, or a leader who inspires such loyalty that their team would follow them anywhere.
Exactly. That's power in action.
That makes me think about the Medici family during the Renaissance.
Oh, yeah.
They were huge patrons of the arts, but they were also really strategic about cultivating dependence among the artists and intellectuals of the time.
Absolutely.
Which, as we know, ended up giving them a massive amount of influence.
Absolutely. And it's a perfect example of how this law can play out on a really grand scale. The Medicis created a system where artists were reliant on them for support, and it gave them this really powerful position within society.
Okay, so I'm starting to get the picture here.
Yeah.
But I do have to ask, doesn't this idea of creating dependence get into some ethically murky waters?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, couldn't this law easily be twisted and used for some pretty shady purposes?
Oh, absolutely. And that's a really important point to consider. I mean, like any tool or principle, this one can be misused.
Right.
But I think the real key lies in the intention behind it. Are you building relationships where both sides genuinely benefit, creating something of value together?
Right.
Or are you simply exploiting others for your own personal gain?
So it's about asking yourself, am I genuinely contributing value here? Or am I just trying to control the situation for my own benefit?
Exactly. Because one leads to this lasting influence and the other just leads to resentment and broken trust.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it actually makes me think of those friends we all have. The ones who are just incredibly supportive, always there for you.
Yeah, always in your corner.
Exactly. It's not necessarily that they're solving all your problems for you.
Right.
But they create this atmosphere of support where you almost feel empowered to succeed. Like you want to succeed for them as much as for yourself.
Absolutely.
And that's a kind of dependence too, isn't it?
It is.
But it's a positive one.
It's a healthy dependence, yeah. And it highlights how the most enduring forms of power are actually rooted in mutual trust and reciprocity,
Right.
and shared values. So it's this interdependence that deepens relationships and makes everyone stronger.
So it's not just about this kind of cold, calculated manipulation. It's about building genuine connections
Exactly.
that benefit everyone involved.
Right. And that's what sets it apart from just, straight up controlling behavior.
Okay, so to kind of bring this all together,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is that understanding these dynamics of power
Yes.
can be both illuminating and empowering.
Absolutely.
It's about recognizing these forces that are constantly at play and using that knowledge to build stronger relationships,
Yeah.
navigate challenging situations, and ultimately achieve your goals
Yeah. Beautifully said.
in a way that benefits everyone.
Right. Well, it's not about manipulation. It's about being indispensable.
Okay.
Becoming the go-to person, the one who has the skills and knowledge that everyone needs.
Right.
So Greene talks about Marie Curie. She basically invented the field of radioactivity,
Wow.
and she became the world's expert on it. People were completely dependent on her.
So she had a lot of power.
Exactly. And she earned it through her expertise.
Okay, so it's not about like holding information hostage or anything like that?
No, it's about making yourself so valuable that people want to keep you around.
Okay, so I'm starting to see how these laws can be used for good.
Yeah, I think that's important to remember. These laws are tools.
Right?
And like any tool, they can be used for good or for bad.
Okay, so let's talk about one more law that I think is really important to understand. Crush your enemy.
Totally.
Oh, wow. This one is intense.
Yeah, that sounds pretty extreme, right?
It does, but Greene's point is that if you're going to strike at someone, you have to do it decisively.
Okay.
You can't leave any room for them to recover.
So you're saying, like, don't just wound them, you got to finish them off.
Well, he uses the example of Cesare Borgia.
Who was an Italian prince. And he made the mistake of not completely destroying his enemies, the Orsini family. And they ended up coming back to haunt him and contributing to his downfall.
Oh, wow.
So the lesson here is to be ruthless.
Okay.
But obviously you have to be careful with this one.
Right.
You don't want to go around crushing everyone who gets in your way.
Yeah, you got to choose your battles.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's maybe end on a slightly lighter note
Okay.
with a law that I think is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
Despise the free lunch.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
I mean, who doesn't love a free lunch?
Right, but Greene's point is that there's no such thing as a free lunch. Everything comes with a price.
Right.
So when someone offers you something for free,
Okay.
ask yourself what they want in return.
It's like that saying, there's no such thing as a free puppy.
Exactly. You always got to pay the vet bills.
Right.
So be wary of gifts and favors.
Okay, that's good advice.
Yeah.
So I think we've covered a lot of ground today. And I hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power.
Yes, and remember, these laws are just tools.
Right.
It's up to you to decide how you use them.
Okay, so before we wrap up,
Yes.
I want to leave you with something to think about.
Okay.
How have you seen these laws play out in your own life?
That is a good question.
Maybe you've witnessed them in action at work or in your personal relationships.
Right.
Or maybe you've even used them yourself. So take some time to reflect on that
Yeah.
and see if you can identify any patterns.
Yeah, and as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to kind of ponder. How can you leverage this principle of strategic dependence ethically, creating these mutually beneficial relationships that ultimately empower you to reach your full potential?
That's a great question, and definitely something for all of us to think about.
Yeah.
So keep exploring, stay curious, and thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of power dynamics.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everyone.
So see you next time.